The whole world is underselling us. You know it as well as I do, right? I can't think of anything better. The fact that they aren't talking about our team with the depth that we have at every position, I've been saying it to every that I've spoken to in the media, right? In terms of our goalies, our back end close defensemen, our long stick middies, our short stick middies, our face-off guy, our midfields, and our attack. We got the best players at each respective spot. Saying what we did. We set the tone. They got to follow our rule. You guys understand that? And that comes down to you handling your role and embracing it regardless of what it is. We don't give a who plays. This is about winning, and that's it. All on three. 1, 2, 3. Ah!
All right, and we're back, and obviously no Matt, but I figured what's the next best thing? A Duke fan, obviously. So, and we'll say Central New York. Is that a fair way to describe
Western New York, but yeah.
Formerly
Central New York.
I was just going to say formerly now Buffalo-ish area. We'll just phrase it that way. I think that's a fair way to say it. I figured I'd bring back a Duke fan who actually knows something about lacrosse versus half the Duke fans who don't watch any games and just say a bunch of crap, just like Syracuse fans. I'm glad to have you back, though. I mean, obviously, we kind of little scheduling, kind of behind the scenes and your work schedule. I was going to say, let's get right into it, though, because you have a different perspective on Syracuse than I do. And I'll have a different, obviously, perspective on other teams than you would. I think we can both agree on that. So you see – what's that? Go ahead.
I don't know how far off my perspective is than yours.
Okay.
And that's not a bad thing because I'll be completely honest. And that's why I kind of wish Matt was here because then he could see the honest side of me as far as my lacrosse fan, not necessarily my bias.
So Matt will see this and Matt will criticize you. That's your answer.
Syracuse is, and I'll say this, and this is completely honest, top to bottom, the most talented lacrosse team in college right now.
Don't do this.
When we talk about actual skill, you look at an attack that's got probably a top 5 pick in the NLL and PLL and Owen Hiltz.
Yep.
Joey, who's going to break Mikey Paul's scoring record next year, I guarantee. And then, your third spot, Finn. I mean, Trey Deer's played a little bit.
Anderson as well.
Anderson's been a little bit. And I talked to my dad about this, and I talked to a couple of my buddies. He's so young, and getting thrown into the fray against a tough ACC it's not an easy task. It's not easy to be great, and there's been moments, and there's always moments for freshmen.
Right.
But then your midfield is so good, and it's so experienced.
First line. We'll get to there. First line. That's the way that I'll say.
Yeah. And you talk about the best two-way midi in the country, and Sam English, and then 2 great scoring offensive middies in Leo and Roa. And there's others. There's obviously depth pieces. Wyatt Hoddle's shown that he can be a two-way guy this year. He's scored some goals. He's been transition. Right. And then your defense. Very experienced unit that's played together. Jimmy McCool, obviously, we know this is his first year. And he's been fantastic. Goalie of the year in the ACC. And Riley Figueres is tremendous lockdown number 1 pull. Billy's obviously kind of like your enforcer, your tough guy, your elder statesman. And then Mike Grace from RIT, who I tracked a ton last year because I love watching D3,
Right.
And he was phenomenal. Great, super talent, just one of those long line RIT guys that just is tremendous. So where do you see the flaws? And I'll tell you, and I know you guys you're big Gate fans, but
no. Don't pay me like this. Don't do this to me.
When Gate got hired, what was it? Right before Joey's freshman year, he's been there for the 3 years that Joey's been there. I thought, you know what? And I talked to a guy, and I've told you. I've talked to a guy on Twitter, and he said that their first choice was someone else.
Yeah.
Another current D1 coach that said no. Obviously, that was their choice.
I was going to say, I think we can figure out who it is. Let's just
it's an Ivy League coach, and it's a semi-recent national championship coach.
Yep.
So that really kind of narrows it down to like one team, right? Because who else has won it out of the Ivy since Bill Tierney?
Right.
But Gate was, obviously he spent so many years with the women's program, and he took them as far as the title game and Final Fours, and never won the big one. Obviously, lacrosse was different back then. You could just sit on it forever. Maryland showed us that. But I thought that Gate would have been great hire as like a Roy Simmons the third role.
Yep.
Great recruiter. Obviously a huge face and brand for the sport. Major Syracuse Mount Rushmore guy right up there with his brother and the Powells and, all those legends, right?
Right.
And I thought, I don't know what Gate knows about coaching at the D1 men's level. He's never done it.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to take someone to pull them from a completely different, set of rules within the sport and say, hey, Gary, coach our men's team. We have a really, really good recruiting class, including the next 22, the top recruit in the country, Joey. So I don't know. I think obviously Gary has a plethora of knowledge. He's very smart. He's very good.
Mm-hmm.
He's an all-timer. I don't know if he's savvy enough to be the head coach. I know I see a lot of Oderna and March on the sideline kind of directing. I don't really see a lot out of Gary. And I don't know. He could be in the huddle when the camera's off them, but I don't see it from him as much as I see it from the assistants, and so I don't see it in him like I see it in like a Nadalin or a Matt Madelon or Tillman or Tambroni, you know what I mean?
Right.
Or even a Connor Busick at Cornell. It's just the fire and the intensity, the adjustments and adjusting to what they're gonna do. Like Syracuse got out. Oh, who are they playing? I can't remember who it was. But that game against Cornell, I paid for it. I watched it. My dad paid for it. I stole his password. And it was, Matt mentioned it on one of your pods. That game was really close and back and forth all game, except for that one Cornell run. And they just couldn't respond to it after that. They couldn't get stops. It was just trading goals for goals.
Right.
And you can't do that against Cornell because everybody knows Cornell's offense is just so good.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say the other thing I'll add to the Cornell thing, and we kind of saw it with Carolina, is you can't give Kirst 10-yard shots and say, Jimmy McCool, okay, good luck. We're just going to leave Kirst. And for whatever reason, there was a bunch of miscommunication. That's been the theme on the defensive side. When they've had those runs, you talked about Dwan, he's the enforcer. That's been missing. Let's just phrase it that way. Because there's a Kirst, there's a Petro with Carolina that gets wide open, and then the casual fan will blame Jimmy McCool.
Oh yeah, no, I know. I see it from all the fan bases that float along the line. And Richard Ellie didn't play well against Syracuse. Yeah. Did he though? Or was the defense just so spun off? And Syracuse's offense was so good at moving and kind of finding spots for Joey to get away from Sean Light. Right. Where he could get hands free and kind of scheming him away, which was fantastic coaching. I can't deny that, because he got, what did Joey go, 4-1 against Notre Dame?
I think it was 4-1. I had everything right in front of me.
Against, a co-defensive player of the year, so that's good, right? And you won, and it was never close, and they never had a chance to come back. Right. And you did a great job on Jake Taylor for the most part until the end when he kind of got hot. You did a really good job on Chris Kavanaugh. So, and then the midfield didn't give them anything, and you dominated the faceoff X with Mullins. Right. It was your best, most complete effort in probably 3 years against anybody.
Yeah, which is crazy to say, because there's been a lot of games where you can point to, and then that happens. And we talked about it before, the ability of Syracuse to not beat a Notre Dame, no matter what year it is. It's just the way it works out. Like it doesn't matter. 1000th game, I think it was 1000th game. I remember going and them getting blown out against Notre Dame. Yeah. And you talked about the Duke one, because the Duke has their kryptonite.
Yeah, we can't beat Notre Dame. And the funny thing is that for the longest time between the late 2000s and the early 2010s, they couldn't beat us.
Yeah.
we beat them in the Final Four. We beat them in the title game twice.
Right.
We've ended their season, and now it's completely tilted in their favor.
Yeah.
And it's almost like they go in with such a poor mindset against Notre Dame that we don't have the talent to beat them. And that was they got doubled up about a month ago, and they played better lacrosse since then. But it's always like, that's Notre Dame. They're a top 3 team. You can't really even compete with them. What are you even going to do in the tournament? You know what I mean?
Right.
What are you going to do against if you run into a Maryland or God forbid a Cornell or even Princeton, who they lost by a goal to?
I was going to say Princeton will put on a show for people.
Yeah.
They're going to be a terror for a lot of teams that aren't ready. And look, I think the funny thing is, like, so the Syracuse fans, at least on the boards I saw, going into the Cornell, we're like, oh, it's just CJ Kirst. It's just CJ Kirst. And Matt and I were screaming to people, it's not just CJ Kirst. Yes, CJ Kirst is obviously probably he's obviously winning the Chwart. We all know that at this point.
Yeah.
Like, he won it weeks ago. Like, let's just be fair. But there are so many complementary players. You saw it with Carolina too. You talked about it before. Duffy. He's on one leg. Like, quote, on one leg.
I'm getting tired of that shtick too, because he's been hurt since last year.
I know,
it
but
gets
you
to
know
a point
what
where,
I mean. Like,
it gets to a point where, what is he ever going to be healthy again?
Yeah.
I mean, and I love Owen Duffy. I think Owen Duffy's going to be a Torden contender for the next 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Same with Petro, who's got 2 more years of eligibility after this. But it's not, that kind of offense is not sustainable to win. I think Dan Arestia posted something about the last 20 title winners or 15, whatever it was, and 2 guys take 40% of their team's shots on offense. And I think there have been 2 title winners or 2 teams that have gone to the title. I know Loyola.
Okay.
With I think Eric Lusby and Mike Sawyer took like 42% or something, and they lost. I think they won the title. I think that was their only title of the century. And then there was another one. I can't remember who, but 2 out of the last 20 years it's just not. And I don't believe in North Carolina as a true title.
No, I'm not saying that, but it's kind of funny because, like, when Matt and I were talking about Carolina, right, it was like, okay, shut off Petro to shoot. He's not going to pass the ball. He's not a passer. He just isn't. Like,
he might not crack 30 assists in 4 years total.
Yeah, like I think he's got 2 right on the year right now. So, like, what's coming with him. When he gets the ball, he's going to do that, right? Yeah. Like, it's not like a Sammy English who's going to throw the ball across cage if he gets by somebody.
And that's
not a good comparison, but you know what
So talking about the ACC tournament, right? And matchups. Yep. Syracuse, Notre Dame, 5:00 tomorrow.
Yeah.
Really good game.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping Gate knows that Kevin Corrigan, once the calendar flips to May.
Yeah, turn it on.
Look at the last 2 games, right? So their last 2 games, North Carolina, they were down like 5-0 and went on like a 12-2 run to end the game or something. Yeah. It was absurd. North Carolina could never recover. And then even against Penn last week, they were down for like 3 quarters.
They struggled. I was going to say they struggled for 90% of the game and still find a way to come back and win.
Found a way to adjust and say, let's stop messing around. And we can't lose this game. That would wreck their RPI. Yeah. That would have dropped them outside of like the top 12.
I would have been the happiest person in the world, though. I can just say that.
I was watching it. Praying that Penn could hold on.
Right.
I know they don't have the horses.
No, I was joking with my dad when we were walking out against Carolina because he goes, "How many games did Notre Dame play?" And I go, "They play like 5." I know it's a joke, but like the fact that they can stretch out their schedule, and that's why they're a May team, right? Because they're well rested.
Yeah, they don't play their first game until March, like middle of March.
Yeah, well, it's a great system. I'm not knocking it. I wish Syracuse would do the same exact thing, or Duke would do the same exact thing from your part, like because then you're resting everybody. Because they have guys from the football team that now are coming over and playing, and making significant impacts.
But it also is kind of like damaging to their RPI if they do drop one of those out-of-conference games earlier in the year. Like if they dropped a Georgetown or a Penn or a Marquette game or something, some random game. Ohio State they lost to this year, which didn't hurt them at all because Ohio State's going to be a top 3 seed.
They lucked out with Ohio State being as good as they are.
Yeah, but that hurts if you drop a game or and you don't have anything to recoup that loss. or God forbid you go 1-3 in the ACC and don't qualify for the 4-team tournament.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like Virginia.
Yeah.
I didn't see 0-4 coming.
No, but we talked about it, right? The Virginia's, that's their lowest year. This is the year to get Virginia, if you're going to get Virginia, because they're a team that Lars continually rebuilds. And
I don't see them being great next year either. I mean,
they're going to be better though.
Like they'll be better, yeah. I don't see them being like runaway top 3 title favorites. I mean, they graduate a lot of seniors, and they're 2 defenders. They're
right.
Nunes has got to be gone.
Yeah,
and then I don't know what grade Truett Sunderland's in. Maybe he might be a senior. He might have a year of eligibility. McCabe's obviously got 2 more.
Mm-hmm.
Colsey, I don't know what his status is. He's great. But they bring back all those guys that are redshirted this year. Those great recruits, right?
I was gonna say I want Colsey in Syracuse next year. Is all I'll say. That's what I want. That's my dream scenario. Is his dad to talk to Syracuse? What I'm gonna say from the things I hear from the background. That's all I'm gonna say.
If anybody, have you heard anything? Have you heard this stuff about Millen's dad?
No, I didn't. So,
no. Well, Millen's not Syracuse. He went to UMass.
We can talk about this out unless you want to. Is it?
No,
that's breaking news or anything.
I think there's just way too much influence on a kid's decision.
Yeah,
go where you want. Go where I want you to go because I can bond with the coach, with the school.
Right.
And he has no tie to Virginia. He went to UMass. I'm sure he's close with Lars.
But that's like Colsey though, because Colsey's dad. The story that we hear here, obviously, because we hear the Lars because he grew up here, is that Colsey developed that relationship with him, and that's why he.
I'm sure that was how it was with Millen too. I'm sure Lars had a really good relationship with Mark Millen, and
I'm not criticizing that part. Like that's not like that's a great thing, but from I laugh, and I get really I think it's comical because McCabe obviously he scored Duke, right? He was committed to Duke, and then he backed out and he went to Virginia, and so far he's 0-2 against us. Right,
and he's gonna miss the tournament. He's gonna have, kind of last year with. Look at the players on that team. They lost in the Final Four. They got blown out by Maryland.
Right.
They lost obviously Shelley and Cormier. And McCabe's here by himself with, kind of guys that have been, they were contributors last year, but not to this extent.
Yeah. Well, so the thing is, I was going to say, if he plays at Duke, this as well as I do. Look at how much better that team is with the McCabe.
That's the thing is that I don't know if we get, and I'm not saying he's better or worse, but we probably don't get Maliver if McCabe's there, because that's his role, the ex-quarterback guy. He might. Right. I don't know. You could play. You can't have enough initiators, but there's always, kind of. It worked out this way for a reason, right?
So, is this how you saw the ACC from the beginning of the year? I know you watch everything lacrosse. So
I thought, I really did. I always knew. I didn't think North Carolina was going to be as good as they were.
Yeah,
but I knew Syracuse and Notre Dame were going to be tough.
Yeah.
And I knew Syracuse had so much. 80% of their lineup is back. The only ones they lost were obviously Jake.
Yeah.
And who was the other one they lost last year?
Blanking. You would ask me this, and I would.
Well, they lost the kid from the transfer from Levi. Was he there last year? Or was that 2 years ago?
That was 2. No, that was I don't. My brain is gonna kill me after this because the minute you stop this conversation with me is the minute that I'll think about it and I'll realize.
I think he was kind of their third attackman last year, but he played scarce. He kind of contributed a little bit, a little scarce on the offense towards the end of the year. It was so geared around
last year. It was last year. Yeah, it was last year. Yeah, but so the crazy thing is, right? We talked about it kind of. You talked about it. There are 3 attackmen, right? You knew Splina and Hiltz were going to be there. The question was, where would they put Finn? Because you need the production from both. And at least the beginning of the year, obviously you want him in attack, but you also didn't see an Anderson there. Trey Deer was doing Trey Deer things where he was dunking on everybody and making his 2-yard shot that he's really good at, and that's his game. Like, he's got the box game. But I think, at least from the Syracuse side, I think people don't want Finn in attack now. They'd rather see him at midi because you have an Anderson that you could put down there that can get physical against.
Yeah, he's a big kid.
And he's going to be good. He's going to be really good.
Oh, yeah.
And they're just going to get better on attack next year. I'll just phrase it that way because getting Trey Deer early reps. let him obviously kind of get into the game and all that. What I think the thing about Gate that people around here hate, I think maybe your dad talks about this with you, is I think the way everything was handled when he came in. I think that's the biggest issue that people have with the university, not with him necessarily, but just the way everything ended with Desco. I'll just phrase it that way. And I'm not saying it's wrong, but like I have that opinion.
They don't typically have short leashes for their coaches. You know, Desco was stretched up for decades, and before him, you know, obviously the long line of Simmons.
Yeah.
And Gate, I think, I don't know. I don't want to necessarily believe that after year one, it was like, okay, we have to build on this, because year one was rough. They didn't have a great year. Joey's first year, they didn't have a great year.
Yeah.
And then last year, you got back into the tournament, and you got beat by a Denver team who just decided they were going to play stall ball on offense, score when they could, and win the miscellaneous stat categories, the ground balls, the face-offs, all that stuff. And okay, well, we made progress, right? We got to the tournament, we won a first round game, and then you know, we got to the quarters. Obviously, we know what happened.
Yep.
This year is the year, and obviously the field is wide open. Mm-hmm. The tournament hasn't started. The ACC tournament hasn't started. There's so much room, and they're in. Syracuse is in. A win over Notre Dame, probably solidifies a host
so
game.
I think they were talking here locally. I think Army has to win the Patriot. Obviously, Richmond. Rutgers couldn't win. There's four scenarios that they needed to probably clinch. Officially.
You can't have bid stealers out of the Ivy.
Yeah, and you're
can't
hoping
have a bid stealer. I don't know if Army coming out of the Patriot. I think the bid steal. I think that's a one bid conference.
Unless they get somebody that obviously.
I don't know if Army is a lock if they lose the Patriot tournament.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair.
I think that could be a one bid. I think the Ivy is obviously, we know Harvard and Princeton and Cornell, right?
So Harvard's on the bubble, is what I was.
Yeah,
hearing.
Harvard's not safe either. They would have to probably win a semifinal game in the Ivy. And then the ACC is likely getting all four of the ACC tournament.
Probably.
I don't really think there's any. I don't think there's really much debate otherwise, unless we lost a bid stealer today, right? Because Rutgers lost, and they were on the bubble. Yeah. So they're out. So that pretty much locks up another ACC team, I'd imagine. And every win is a good win in the ACC tournament. You beat North Carolina, you beat Notre Dame, you beat Syracuse, you beat Duke. It's all top 10 RPI wins.
Right.
Nothing's damaging in any way.
I think the only way that Syracuse would host, though, is if they win. They have to win both.
I think they have to. If they beat Notre Dame, that's a top 5 RPI win. That gets them a 7 or 8 seed, maybe a 6.
Yeah.
They host.
And then,
I think if they lose, it wouldn't be a damaging loss RPI-wise.
Right.
But it wouldn't help their resume.
I was going to say.
It wouldn't hurt it, but it wouldn't help it.
That's where they luck out being in the ACC, obviously, because if you lose, and you just talked about it, you lose to anybody. Even if you lose to any of them, it's like, okay, they're good. Okay, Duke's number 9 or whatever. Like, it's not a terrible loss. Like, it's not some.
Not even Virginia would have been a bad loss. It would have probably put us on the outside looking in, but we still could have made up the ground. Actually, we couldn't have, because we would be out of the ACC tournament. So I'd probably be swatting if we lost to Virginia.
It's kind of crazy because, like, with Syracuse people, we want going into the Carolina game. Okay, we can lock up the 1 seed if. Obviously, we beat Carolina.
Yeah.
And then the panic started during the Notre Dame game or the Carolina game. Because then it's like, okay, we're a 4 seed. Okay. We're going to, you know how this works. Like, you start thinking about it as a Syracuse fan. Like,
I mean, look at Cornell. Cornell has lost 1 game all year, Penn State, like a month and a half ago. And they're not even with an Ivy League championship. They're probably pretty firmly as the number 1 seed, right? But they're not right now.
That's what's crazy though, right? Though, because like if they, it's gonna sound horrible the way I say this. If they scheduled better, they'd be a lock for a number 1 seed.
Well, that's going back to Notre Dame too, right? That just one slip up with such a shallow schedule could hurt you in the end.
Well, I mean, even if so, Harvard kind of worked out for Syracuse because they obviously are on the bubble.
They're a tournament.
But like if you lose to a Jacksonville, or if you lose to somebody like that, then that's that damaging loss for Syracuse, right? Because Maryland's obviously, we all know it's a good win or a good loss. You can deal with that.
When we got blown out 2 years ago by Syracuse, when they went 4-10,
right?
That's what kept us out.
That's what I mean, though. Like, you know that, like, and like from the Syracuse side, right? You lose to Maryland, that's a good loss.
Cornell, Harvard,
lose to Cornell, that's Harvard ended up being a good loss.
They have no bad losses.
Yeah, they have no bad losses. They have no bad losses to the national people, but we both know how the forums go crazy. They go nuts. Like I was telling Matt, and we were talking to Tim last time. They went nuts when they didn't beat Jacksonville by enough. It was crazy. The fire gates have been going all year. And like they don't have a short leash. I think we all need to admit that. Like I know you admit that. I know I admit that.
Nobody. But you look at Facebook after a Syracuse loss or anybody.
Yeah, and I know you know this because
it's 80% fire gate. It's 80%. Gary's got to go.
Yeah,
and we need a real coach, and
that's why I sent the message I sent to you about the succession plan for Danowski, because obviously that's tongue in cheek with that.
Yeah,
I know it's the same thing for you as it is for us. Like, you guys realistically aren't going to fire him. It's going to be when he wants to walk away.
You can't. It's almost like an unwritten rule. Like, even Desko, I think, was given like okay, here's an ultimatum.
Yeah.
You can retire with honor.
Yep.
Or, that's one side of the coin. And I don't think you want to know what the other side is.
The quote mutual.
Yeah. And I think Dom Starja was given that. I think Tierney kind of walked away, but I knew it was kind of getting hard for him.
Right.
And it'll be like that for Danowski.
Yep.
And it's been like that for a lot of older coaches. Desko was another one too. It was getting close to the end.
Yeah, he was. I think they talked about it here. He was a couple of years away, 1 or 2, but like he was there. Like he could. Obviously, he walked away. You know what I mean? Like, nothing's gonna change with that. He walked away, and he's good. Like, now he can go and do whatever he wants. Now he can sit on the sidelines and watch people.
He's got a handful. He's got a handful of rings.
Yeah. Well, so you know this. Obviously, your fandom goes as much as mine. What do you say to the people, though, for the Final Four run for Syracuse? You know this as well as I do.
I think Syracuse plays. I think it. Like I said, it's such a wide open field. I really don't think there's anybody that stands above. Not even Notre Dame.
Right.
We've seen some flaws. We've seen some no shows. They no showed against Penn for 3 quarters.
Yeah.
They had a couple of, they're better now. They're peaking at the right time, but they had a couple of games earlier in the season where they got out physicaled. Mm-hmm. Syracuse did whatever they wanted to against them.
Yeah.
And even North Carolina, if they didn't get away from what worked,
right.
Could have taken them all the way through the 4th. There's just Ohio State. I don't know if they have the pedigree. As good as they are, as physical as they play, the great goalie play. Fayok is obviously fantastic. They have good attack. They have 2 good midi lines, and they have a great coach. I love Nick Myers. Again, I don't know if they have the pedigree. They haven't really done much in the tournament in a while. Maryland they have the pedigree. They have the great coach. They have the stout defense and this organized offense that will not shoot unless they have a great shot. Dreadful to watch sometimes.
It's terrible to watch when the Big Ten camp recruits are working. That's
North Carolina is another one. This is a team that's predicated on kind of an aggressive running offense. But if Wambach doesn't have a great day and they can't dominate possession, or the ride doesn't work to create havoc, who knows? They're young too. Their best players are sophomores.
I was going to say, guys, when you have teams against them that are making mental errors, I'll just phrase it that way. It also helps with their ride, because Syracuse made their ride look a lot better than it was. I'll just say it that way. There was a couple times on TV, because I actually was able to go to this one. There was a couple times where obviously you can see things different in person than you can on the TV. You can see different angles.
Yeah.
And you can see Syracuse people that were open. I'll just phrase it that way. Well, Carolina was riding, and there were but they had locked on to people. It's like when a quarterback locks on the receiver, cornerback comes up, quarterback, you know it with the Jets. I'll compare it to the Jets, right? They throw a pass, they know the defender's coming. I'm still going to force the ball in. It's going to get picked off every time, all that fun stuff. We saw that a bunch against Carolina because they literally locked onto somebody. They're like, okay, I'm going to throw it to Carter Rice every time.
Yeah.
Okay, Carolina's going to shut him off at some point. Like, that's the –
Well, you scheme it so that your ride is defensive on the ball carrier.
Yeah.
You know, the one that they want to clear.
Right.
So you try to get it to a Carter Rice, like you mentioned, or Sam English.
Yeah.
Someone that has a great stick and can kind of find gaps in the ride to get through.
Right.
You prioritize them and you force, you know, the not so great ball carriers or the not so great LSM to kind of make that decision. Do I cross? Do I have guys back? And now I have to either force feed a pass down to the attack or, like you said, tight window to a midfielder.
Or shoot
and every
ball.
Team does it. And that's great coaching.
Yeah.
A good ride is all really good coaching and working really hard.
The good thing for Syracuse is Notre Dame essentially does the same. Obviously, a lot of teams do the 10-man now. So a lot of teams play that way. So you can't make the excuse if you're a Syracuse fan. They haven't seen it all year because they've seen it every game, and they're starting to shut off Carter Rice, and they're trying. I should say they're trying. And they're cutting off the same English. And like you said, they're making somebody like Ochoa bring the ball up from the defensive side. Not that he's bad, but they're making somebody like Jake Spallina go down, get the ball, and say, okay, get across now. Now have fun going against our three midfielders that are waiting in midfield for you.
And their ride sits back at midfield.
Yeah.
So they're not giving you that gap between the restraining line and midfield to kind of have someone kind of move into that gap like a receiver moving in the slot, you know? They're going to stay back and either say, throw it over us, run by us.
Yeah.
This is where we're going to play prevent almost.
Yeah, and for a lot of teams it works, right? So Syracuse kind of did some things in the Notre Dame game where they were able to score from the poles, right?
Yeah.
It kind of gets exposed if you play it right.
Then you force the ride to adjust to that.
Right.
And that's when you start to have more success.
Right. Because now if you got a Gray shooting from midfield, right? And if he scores like he has before, like now I'm not gonna let Grace bring the ball up. Okay, now somebody else comes open. Now Kozinski, who if he's stuck out there as a pole, is open. Now I can throw the ball across and just let him bring it up. Or what, you know how that works.
Yeah.
How do you see the ACC tournament going? I'll just ask it that way.
Honestly, I would love to exact revenge on North Carolina because that was a game where a lot of self-inflicted wounds. We lost 8-7. And our offense has been pretty terrible all year. You know, we'll go on little runs and they can score in transition well, but they don't go in transition a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Charlie Johnson did really good on Owen Duffy. He held him to 1 goal and 1 bullshit assist. Yeah. Which was a shot that just somehow bounced to Petro and he scored and they couldn't count it as an assist. He's stripped him 5 times. He did really well on him. And that's my scout for Owen Duffy is against Syracuse. I think he had 4 or 5 assists. I don't think he scored, but he had his hands free a lot. And
well, they also we were talking about with Tim. They also slid quick.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're going to slide quick off Petro, that's going to suck for every team that does that because once again, he's a good enough shooter. He shoots the ball 99% of the game. Let's just say for them.
I think he took 20 shots against Syracuse.
Yeah, but like you can't let somebody get that many shots off though.
No.
Either.
And if you kind of squeeze Petro a little bit and maybe shy away from being that like secondary cold slide.
Yeah.
Say we want Owen to beat us.
Yep. Well,
and then the slide's going to come to him, but we're really something I wish they would have done against Jake Taylor.
Yep.
Jake Taylor is somebody probably outside of CJ Kirst, the one attackman you just can't leave. He's got too good of hands. He's always good at finding the pockets. Mm-hmm. And I wish they would have done that with him. Petro's becoming that player too. Great shooter. Right. Can shoot from beyond 10, 12 yards, easy, with success. So I would love to see Syracuse beat them again, because I don't care for Notre Dame at all. I think that would be a really good game. I think it's going to depend on Mullins.
Yeah.
Because he had a lot of success against Will Lynch.
I was going to say, they won 16-9. I have the Notre Dame Syracuse stats right in front of me. So what
was his face-off against Will Lynch? It was pretty dominant until the end. I think Will got a few back.
Yeah, it was 16-9 Syracuse.
And I think they won a few at the end to kind of close the gap a little bit.
I was going to say they
was that close.
They outdid Syracuse 5-4 in the fourth. So that
it was never that close. It was almost like Syracuse, like the reverse Syracuse to the Wambach.
Yeah.
He kind of did really well for the first 3 quarters, but then Mullins got hot in the fourth and made it a little bit more respectable.
Well, that was the other thing that kind of bothers me about Syracuse fans a lot of times, and I could say this as one, and you would probably agree with this, is they don't know a lot of the other players. Yeah. So they see a Johnny Mullen go up against a Wambach, right? And they're like, okay, he should be great. Johnny Mullen's the best face-off guy in the country, blah, 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 blah. Done great all year. We all know that. I'm not even saying that's wrong, but like he's going to go up against kids that are better than him and that have more experience than him and have. And
because he was.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, how many face-offs did he take last year with Mason Cohen there? Maybe 100 for the whole year.
Probably
something
took a
lot
right around that.
Yeah, Mason took a lot.
Yeah,
and I saw Mullins play. He was good in his time facing off last year in relief. It was. Yeah, they don't pay attention to that stuff. You know, nobody looks and sees they're playing. Duke's playing North Carolina now. They were not necessarily even with Wambach, but they were good enough to not let them dominate possession.
Yeah.
And that could be completely different tomorrow. So who knows?
And I should phrase it. It's not just Syracuse fans. It's every lacrosse fan. I'll just say it that way. That doesn't, because there are people who are already counting. And I joked with you with what I said kind of in our messages. The doom and gloom for me was I wanted them to be a 1 seed. And that was I thought they could do it for me.
Yeah.
Because
they would have been the 1 seed, right? With a win over North Carolina.
They would have been the 1 seed. Yeah. And it's not that the season's over. Obviously, you and I have talked about it privately. I'm not even saying that. I just wanted that, right? Because that's your chance to show the country what you can do against the Carolina.
Yeah.
And they show it with 2 minutes left in the game, and it's the most annoying. I hated the score because of that.
I wish they would expand the ACC. I really do, because you go from potentially being the 1 seed to the 4 seed in one game.
Yeah.
It just sucks, you know?
Yeah. Who's who? Okay, so I'll ask you. I've asked Tim. I've asked Matt. Who do they get? There's your answer. That's your question. If they could add anybody, let's just. What do you mean? So if they could add anybody to the ACC to get the AQ.
I look at the women's ACC standings all the time, and I see Virginia Tech and Clemson and Pitt and these schools. It's just why do they have money in the budget for a women's program but the men don't? Is there just no interest? Is it not? It's not a sport that they would prioritize.
I think it's, at least with the Clemson side, it's a Title IX.
I mean, they have football on the men's side, which consumes so much of the school's budget, right? And women don't have that, so they have a little bit more money to disperse.
They just built the new lacrosse facility for the Clemson women, too.
I know.
So they have the money. They have the money.
Alexa Spallina to go there.
There's more than that. I'll just say it.
Oh, yeah. They have a great class coming in.
Yeah.
They're a promising team.
There's more than that. You know this.
Think some money got funneled into her pockets there, maybe?
Oh, I'll just say you know their father like I know their father. That's how I'll phrase it.
The new head coach of the Redwoods?
Yeah.
Is that where Big Joe is?
Yeah.
He's gonna draft my guy. He's gonna draft McAdory. I got a feeling. He coached him in high school, so Team 91.
You're so excited about that. You love.
I'm not a Redwoods fan. I don't know. I think I saw Matt wearing an Atlas hat. Is he an Atlas fan?
I think Matt's a fan of whoever gives him a shout out. That
I'm a huge homer for guys that like. I'm such a Brennan O'Neill fan that I'm an Outlaws fan. I would have been a Chrome fan if you went there if they didn't, obviously didn't change the franchise over. But
it's the Cannons for me.
I don't have a loyalty really. I don't.
Yeah.
I love watching all of it. I love watching the players. I think it's such a fun league. The concepts are cool. How they run everything. Obviously, we need to make some changes with some stuff because you don't want to go stagnant with it. You want to continue to grow.
I was gonna say Matt and I have talked about it. I went to the one in Albany when they went there, and it was amazing. I took my wife there. She's never seen a pro event, never anything like that. And she goes, I think we'd come here if it ever came to Syracuse. And I was like, that's a win. It's
like a festival. It's like a lag festival. They have a ton of stuff, and I want to get down there this summer to wherever they, wherever they have them this year in New York State. So
I think Albany again. So I think.
Where did they play? Did they play at the University of Albany?
Yes, it's at their stadium field. Yeah. So it's a good atmosphere though. Like in all seriousness, like it's a good atmosphere. Let's get back to the NCAAs because nobody's listening to this for your PLL takes. No offense to you. Syracuse has a successful season if ... I'll ask you the same question I like to ask everybody because
they make the Final Four. Okay. I think it's got to be Final Four or bust.
Okay.
And I think that's really going to help Gary Gates' case. Mm-hmm. I know some people have been floating around the idea of O'Derna maybe jumping at the chance to go somewhere. Or even Pat March. I don't know. I mean, I think he's pretty content being the offensive coach at Syracuse. But O'Derna was a head coach for a D1 program, so he's got some sort of a resume behind him. Yeah. He was at Manhattan for however long.
I think the thing that I'm hearing behind the scenes is he wants one, but he's going to take his time picking it, right? So he wants to go to the right situation.
Yeah, he doesn't want to go somewhere where it's going to be like a rebuild, step back.
So his family still is in Manhattan. So there's a lot of talk of Manhattan, somebody like that going.
Let me ask you this, and devil's advocate here. Gary doesn't make it past the conclusion of next year. Okay. Who do you want as the next coach at Syracuse? Who would be your pick if you could grab anybody?
It'd be Johnny.
Oh, really?
I want Johnny. That's who I wanted. That's who I wanted before, though. Like, so I can, because of what he's done at Jacksonville. That's why. Like,
I'm just waiting for someone to grab him because he's made that program so relevant.
I'll flip it back to you. Who would be your?
I always wanted Nadalin.
Okay.
I like. He's youthful. He keeps up with the times.
Mm-hmm.
He prioritizes defense and chemistry and industrious work ethic and stuff like that. And I think Danowski does too, but I just think the game is kind of passing him by. He's older. They're all older. It's just not it's not an old man's coaching,
right?
I think NCAA league anymore.
So knowing what I know about O'Derna now, I'd put him as a slight second as a Syracuse fan. Because the way you talked about it, the way he's on the sideline, the way things are being run on the sideline, I love what I see from him as an assistant coach.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people who want him as the head coach here now.
And I think it's almost like, he took this job and he comes over and he has to coach with Gary Gate, right? And, it's like an icon for the sport.
Right.
But I think that in his heart still, he's like, I really want to lead a team. I don't want to just be a defensive coordinator anymore.
Right.
So he'll go.
And
that's good for the sport, right? Because good coaches like that deserve a chance.
Yeah, and then you play the game.
Another chance.
I was just going to say, then we play the game of who's the next assistant, and then you start to find probably a Beardsley, possibly.
Maybe a recent grad that wants to get into it, someone that has maybe played professionally. Somebody that wants to get back into it as a coach.
I think Rick might be a choice. I'll just say it that way. Knowing what obviously Uncle Ricky as well as I know. He's coaching high school, so why not?
Yeah. I think a good prospect would be Kevin Unterstein.
Yeah.
He's our D coordinator, and our defense has made some really good strides this year. So there's a chance that he could be grabbed.
I was going to say we don't want a Dookie on our staff. Okay,
you'd want him.
I didn't say that. I can joke with you a little bit about this.
He's only been a Dookie for 1 year.
Yeah.
He was where did he go? Hofstra? I can't even remember.
If I'll just say it this way, if we hired Petra, we can hire anybody. That's how I'll say
it.
No.
Petra would still be there if he didn't want to go coach his kid, which I get.
Well, and he's got the other one. He's got the other one coming too.
The other one, yeah. They're already there. They're both there.
Oh, is he?
The other one's a defenseman.
Okay.
But I don't know how much he plays, if at all.
Oh, that's right. I thought he was still in high school. Maybe my brain is just.
I think Petro's done when Dom's done. I think that'll be it. I think that's when he'll hang it up as a coach. He's had a really, really good career.
I hope so. Because he deserves to hang him up. I'll just say that.
He's got his title. He's got his title as a player.
Right.
He's been to a lot of Final Fours. He's done a really good job for the sport. I think that would be a good send off. Follow your kid into the sunset, and then you could just be a full time, fan, or maybe do something in the pro league. Who knows?
He looks way different though, because I had somebody next to me who goes, "Who's that coach that's waddling back and forth on the Carolina sideline?"
That's our guy. That's what we had last year.
Yeah. Well, you know this, and. It's my annoyance with Syracuse fans. I'll just say it. Once again, this is where we go back to the not knowing, right? Like,
I will say this. It's not always good to hire the sexy choice, right? The really, really the one that's like Denver decided to go with Matt Brown when Tierney left. And was that Milliman was Hopkins' choice after Petro left. I mean, these are like, wow, man, and they've been Hopkins kind of slid this year, but there's a lot of promise there, I think.
I was gonna say, but I think that's a cautionary tale for Syracuse fans because the ones who want Gary fired. Yes, if I could hire Johnny today, I would. Like, I just would. Remember when Johnny hired Casey Powell to be his OC and it just didn't work out,
right? And imagine having to fire maybe the greatest. Syracuse, maybe one of the greatest players that's ever played,
right?
But it just wasn't a fit, and that's okay because it's not always going to work out.
Yeah, and I think people need to realize that because like the diehards here are like, Gary's the greatest, and I'm like, okay, he's good. Nobody's debating that. We know that. Like, but is he quote Syracuse good, or is he some other program good at coaching? Right, because the people in the circles, I'm sure we talk in the same circles. We know this. Want to see the emotion out of Gary, and that's more suited for a smaller D1 school. I'll just phrase it that way. Like, that's because the spotlight's not going to be on him, right? Like, Lemoyne is a good one. If he went to Lemoyne, besides the people in Syracuse, nobody would care.
No.
That's the worst.
You got Dan Sheehan there now, and he's got 6 rings, and nobody really cares.
That's what I mean.
Nobody knows enough about Lemoyne because nobody paid attention to D2 for forever, and now Lemoyne's in year 2 of D1, and they got beat today. Did you see the score of that game?
I did. I saw your post, and then I looked. But, like, they're going to be good, though. That's the thing about them. Like, Matt and I were kind of joking about it because you know how the NCAA does their travel for the first round.
Yeah.
Syracuse is going to host Lemoyne, or Lemoyne is going to host Syracuse.
I think they should play annually. Honestly,
they might
get rid of the Vermont game or whoever. Yeah, you lost Hobart this year, which I thought was insane.
There's talks that they're gonna lose Hobart for good.
Really.
Yeah, there's talks that Hobart is going to drop lacrosse, or drop it down to D3 is what.
How about Limestone? They're gone.
That's crazy. Those are all, but like, I mean, like, you think about it, like how good, how Limestone is, like,
yeah,
that'd
be like Penn State dropping lacrosse for D1.
Yeah,
like, and maybe not even Penn State, maybe like
Marquette.
I don't know. Limestone's got 2 titles. They're in the Final Four like every other year.
Yeah, and it's the way things have changed, though. You know that as well as I do. Just the funding and everything has gone crazy because Look at like Hopkins, right? Everything else is D3 for them. So if they weren't good, they'd be gone. Like they'd be.
You're seeing a lot of movement. I mean, look at the teams in just the past few years that have gone from D2 to D1. Look at Lemoyne and Merrimack and Mercier's now, and they're not. I don't know what it is. I don't know. It's good for D1 because you're growing and developing more.
Yeah, but you're also killing D2.
D2 is nobody. I used to love paying attention because I loved watching Merrimack and Lemoyne and Mercier's because they were always there.
Yep, and Salisbury.
But now it's like
they're not Salisbury.
Let me turn on Tampa and St. Anselm and
which I think is sad, right? Because they're good programs. It's not that they're bad, but it's just not the same, right? Because I would hear all about Lemoyne, obviously because of where I live.
Mm-hmm.
I don't hear much about them anymore since they became D1.
No,
and that's scary
because they're a little fish in a big pond.
They're 15 minutes from me, Mike. Like, I hate to say it that way, but like they're.
I would go to Lemoyne games if I was in the area. I mean, their schedule was rough this year. I mean, they went 9-6, I think, and a lot of bad teams. But it's good because you want to build momentum as a program. If you roll, like, remember Michigan for the first few years when they went from club to D1?
We talk about Michigan way too much. I remember
they got
Michigan
buried by everybody, and now they're like in the tournament, and contending for Big Ten titles.
Yeah, which is
it takes time.
You know this because we talk Michigan football enough. If you told me that Michigan lacrosse would contend for a title or a Big Ten title, I'd laugh at you.
Yeah,
I'll be perfectly honest. I mean, like with how they became a D1 program and how everything obviously started out with them.
I mean, to have those first few really, really bad years, but now you beat Maryland like 3 out of the last 4 times.
Yeah.
Look what they've done in a decade.
Yeah. And they're getting a lot better too. That's the one thing for them. Like they're
good coaching, good recruiting. It's obviously a great school to attend.
I was just gonna say, look at the university that they go to though. They're putting money into lacrosse, whereas because they're putting money into their stadiums, they're upgrading everything.
You see the potential and the growth, and you're like, yeah, this is a program we can really fund and get behind.
Yeah. Well, they got enough boosters that are playing PLL that can sit there and throw money back at them. So who do you think? So if you had to put a prediction for the ACC, you have to write.
I would see Syracuse Duke in the final.
Okay.
And I think they'll both be 1-2 goal games in the semis, and I think it would be Syracuse.
Don't do this.
I think it would,
because I'll never hear the end of it from you if Duke wins if that happens.
I didn't really talk about it a lot. I mean, I've heard some stuff because I knew I was more happy that we got a marquee win that could get us a tournament spot and make us kind of safely in the field.
Right.
It wasn't even. I would have been just as happy if we beat, earlier in the year if we had beat Princeton.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That game we let slip away because we just couldn't string together any stops.
Mm-hmm.
But you're always chasing. It's not even about the rivalry and all. I beat my friend's team, and I can hold it over there. In this era, you want to win because you don't want to watch May without your team.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I was gonna say I think Syracuse fans have gotten used to that, unfortunately. And
they'll get.
I know this, but the short-sightedness of people to say, "Oh, Syracuse will never get back. This will never happen again," which like I said, you see the message boards for Duke just as much as I see them for Syracuse. They're absolute nuts. Like you see the Syracuse post after they win, and people are like, they didn't beat them by enough. They suck. Jimmy McCool sucks or something like that. He gave up 10 goals to
not every game is going to be a blowout.
Yeah.
Not with the parity in the sport there is now.
Well, I think people are thinking like 2000s. It might be fair, like in there, and it's never going to be that way again. There's just, like you said, the Lemoynes, the Merciers.
Yeah, you just don't. Notre Dame was such an anomaly last year, and to go through the tournament like they did, and just destroy everybody. I mean, a 10-goal tournament championship win over Maryland is unheard of. I mean, it just doesn't happen, and it probably won't happen again for another 2 years.
I told Matt and Tim, I think Syracuse wins in overtime against Notre Dame because it should be that kind of game, realistically. Like it's
Who's
going to
got
be
the game winner? I'm thinking Sam English. That's my.
I was gonna say the same. Actually, it's gonna be somebody from the midfield, right? Because the attack is all the talk. Nobody talks about Sam. Everybody talks about Sammy, right? But let's just say if Leo comes down and makes it, people will go nuts here.
Yeah, like Leo or Roa. I like both of them. They're both great players. Both great shooters.
Or Huddle. You know what? I'll go out on a limb. Give me Huddle for the game winner.
That would be a frenzy in Charlotte.
Yeah, because you know this. He starts out at D mid last year. Never see him on offense, and now he's gone to probably the most productive guy on the second line. The guy
who is your second line?
It depends on the game. That's your
answer. You guys tend to really favor that first line. They probably
they run Cordes and McCarthy. They've been running Cordes and McCarthy with him.
He's a freshman, right, McCarthy?
Yes, I think so. But he's so we joked about it. We were talking about it. He's the guy that's not going to do anything wrong. I think he has maybe 1 or 2 goals on the year. So like he's the guy that gets you the rebounds. And then
he's a transition guy.
Yeah, Cordes is obviously going to shoot.
He's not going to be a major initiator,
right?
But he's not going to hurt you.
Well, and you think about it this way too. Like if there was some big midfielder besides Huddle on that line, that'd be so a bruiser or somebody like a Sammy, somebody that's big enough to get by people, but also can back somebody.
Who leaves next year besides Sam and Hilt? Any of is Dwan a senior?
Dwan's a junior.
Is he?
Yeah.
And Figueres has got 2 more years or 1?
I think he's got 1. He walked this year, so he's got 1 more.
Was he in Joey's class?
I think so.
Or he
redshirted.
Yeah, he popped his ACL, didn't he?
Yeah. So you're gonna.
So he's Owen's class.
Yep.
He's just got 1 more year.
He's got 1 more year, and then that's the thing though, Mike. They reload everybody again.
Yeah.
Essentially, obviously Sammy's we know how big a piece Sammy is.
Well, you got Joey and Leo and Roa and Finn Thompson.
Yeah.
And then your defense, you bring back 2 starters and your goalie. You lose Mike Grace, obviously you lose English, big. Yep. And you bring back Mullins, got 2 more years.
Yeah.
As your faceoff guy. So it's a top 5 team again next year to start the season.
I don't want to hear that.
Nobody cares about the preseason polls, but
I know
that's what it is.
But the problem is people do. That's the issue. People shouldn't, right? Because Syracuse is going to be ranked in the top 5 because they return everybody. That's just the way it's going to work out. It happened this year. The problem is people pay so much attention and they put so much pressure on a team. Because I heard it all year. Oh, they were ranked number 2, so that means that the experts favored them to be a national champion. No, it just means they returned everybody, and they thought they'd be good. They didn't see them play anybody.
Virginia started the year at 6.
Yeah,
and they're outside of the top 20. So
yeah,
and everybody's poll except Quince for some reason, where they're 15th at 6 and 8.
I was gonna say I haven't looked at Quince polls all year. I'll just
when nobody does.
Yeah,
just having to scroll by it every now and again.
Yeah. Who do you think wins the NCAA in general?
Okay, so if we're looking at let's look at the top 8 seeds right now.
Yeah.
So if the top 8 seeds are Cornell, Notre, not in no order, I'm just naming them. Cornell, Notre Dame, Princeton,
Maryland.
Probably
if Ohio State wins the Big Ten, I was going to say if they win the Big Ten, they're obviously they're hosting right.
Let me pull up Mark Hart's bracketology real quick because he usually sends one out every week.
I think they sent one out Monday. I think
so. His top 8 are Maryland, Princeton, Cornell, Penn State, Ohio State, North Carolina, and Duke.
Right.
Out of those 8, I don't believe in Duke or North Carolina as a serious Memorial Day contender.
Okay.
I just think Duke they're too limited on offense.
Yep.
North Carolina is just far too young. Notre Dame is definitely a contender.
Yep.
Ohio State, I think they're
probably
ceiling is a Final Four.
Yeah. They're
Penn
probably
State,
a year away,
after
though.
watching them today, no.
Yeah.
Too dependent on Trainer and that freshman. Maryland, just because of their coach, yes.
Yeah.
And Cornell because of their offense.
Right.
Outside of that, the 8 road teams, Syracuse, and that's it.
Because like so Terry Floyd was on the local radio today here, and they had him on because they were talking obviously bracketology and how that everything goes with that. And he was saying, I've never heard it phrased this way. He goes, I don't want them to get hot now. I want them to get hot tomorrow and Sunday.
Who's this? Syracuse?
Terry Floyd. Any team. He was just saying any team. Like, I want them peaking at the ACC. I want them peaking at the ACC. He used ACC as an example. I want them peaking at the ACC tournament final because then you go right into the tournament and you have
we have Selection Sunday in 3 days and then we start the first round games the next weekend. So it's
gonna get.
Do they start midweek or do they start on Saturday?
I thought they were Saturday games.
Saturday and Sunday,
yeah. That's how they because
you got to account for travel and all the preparation stuff,
and graduation and all that stuff. It's,
I mean, look at Army. Army's 12-1. Their only loss is to Boston, which is obviously kind of damaging because they're out.
Yeah,
but they're a bubble team, a serious bubble team without winning the Patriot League. You know,
I know, but that's what's crazy though. Like they and every other year, right? At 12-1 would get in, and they'd be fine, and they'd be hosting.
I haven't looked at Army's schedule outside of the Patriot. I know they beat North Carolina. That's a good win.
I'm going to pull this up while you're doing that. So I'll pull it up for you on my side. Just because I want to see. Because Matt and I played this game where we see, obviously, because like who they played, just to see like if there's anybody.
Army's best win is North Carolina. After that, everything falls outside of the top 20 RPI, with Rutgers losing today.
I was going to say they
Yale
beat Yale.
Is awful. Colgate fell off. Navy, Lehigh, Lafayette, not even.
Mercer, obviously.
And then Ohio State's got an incredible resume if you look at everything before March.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a Hopkins and a Virginia win. Those don't mean anything.
Right.
Michigan win doesn't mean anything now. Notre Dame and Penn State are good wins. So Ohio State's good. Notre Dame wins going to keep them firmly in a top 4 seed conversation. That and Penn State, even with Penn State's loss today.
I was going to say I'm pulling it up on my side right now because I have the Terry Foy bracketology. Not that it's – I mean, they're obviously going to be right around the same, but –
I mean, Cornell has a really good case for the 1 overall. They have Princeton, Richmond, Harvard, Syracuse. Only losses to Penn State. Maryland has 8 top 20 wins. Yeah. Every team they beat is in the top 20.
They're gonna get the number 1. I think.
I think Maryland's the 1 too. They just have too much of
any other year Cornell. I was gonna say any other year Cornell gets it. That's the sad part. Like if you look at any other, it's like okay, they beat Syracuse. Okay, that's neutral, but it's still Syracuse. There you go. That's it. That seals it. By name alone, people will jump on that and say Cornell deserves the 1 seed, and they're good. Like they're contenders, though. I think that's
they are. But every team, no team is without flaw, right? Look at Notre Dame, or not Notre Dame. Look at Cornell versus Dartmouth last week. Yeah. Real dogfight from start to finish, and they did a good job on Curse. He only had 3 points, which is like awful for him considering he averages 4.7 goals a game.
I was going to say, so when Syracuse played Cornell, I don't know if you listened to that one. I said to Matt, hold him to 10 points. And then you're hoping that that's where you hold him to, like, because he's that good. And he's going to pass the ball, too. Like, that's the thing about him is he's not just a scorer because everybody's going to slide to him, and then he's a feeder, too. for them.
He's such an extraordinary player. I really don't know if and Dan Arestia talked about Zach Greer's goal record, and he had 42 goals in his transition year to Bryant when they were transitioning to D1, and he has 248, which is untouchable. Nobody will ever hit that.
Well, and he's gonna hit it in the least amount of goals too.
That's the thing.
Least amount of games. Sorry, least amount of games.
His career goals per game is like so far above everybody else's.
Well, no.
And he's shooting like 49% this year.
I was just going to
absurd.
Not to say it this way. If you look at the Syracuse game, though, when you give him 10-yard shots, what is he going to do? He's going to bury him every single time. Like,
I'm really looking forward to that game tomorrow, Syracuse Notre Dame. I think it's going to be very.
I think it's going to be good. It's going to be interesting to see what O'Derna does, though, because like he switched up the defense every couple of sessions. He went man, and then he went zone, and then he went back to man, and then they did it against Carolina towards the end, but they kind of stayed the same way.
What do you who guarded Kavanaugh? Was it Figueres?
I think it was Figueres because Dwan had Taylor. I think.
You got the two keys to Syracuse winning tomorrow, outside of the faceoff, which is such an obvious thing.
Yeah.
Because if you can control the possession game, then that's so huge.
Yeah.
But finding a way, they did such a good job of scheming Joey into situations where he could get good looks, and get the ball with his hands free.
Right.
Sean Light is only a sophomore, and he's maybe a top 2 long stick in the country. He's really good, and I know he's going to take that assignment tomorrow serious because it was probably his worst game in 2 years.
Yeah, and he's heard about
it. Granted, he wasn't really credited with giving up those goals because again they got Joey away from him.
Yeah,
but that and making sure that you really, really limit Taylor's touches inside that crease area, right in that 5x5 area in front of the goal. That's where he lives.
Well, and if you're on Syracuse on the offense, it's not just Joey; it's control the possession, like you said, right? They didn't do it against Carolina. They would run down and then they would shoot, turn it over. Okay, now my defense has to play. After they just gave up a 5-minute possession from Carolina or whatever, they get a rebound. You have to control the clock. Like you have to dictate the pace in that.
And that's why I'm so impressed every year, and even on years where they don't have a guy that even breaks 40 points.
Yeah,
I'm so impressed with John Tillman.
Yeah,
I watched that Maryland game today.
Yeah,
and it was 7-7.
Yep.
Or 8-7, 7-6, whatever the score was, late. 10 minutes left in the fourth. And one of the Maryland polls got a 3-minute full-time penalty for high hit.
Yeah, I think I saw you post about that.
And they didn't even get a shot on goal.
Yeah.
In that 3 minutes. And they had the ball for probably 2 minutes and 20 seconds of it. And that's just remarkable to not break.
Right.
And you're giving up all you're giving up. They didn't give up any penetrating passes. Everything was a deep shot. Nothing was close.
Right.
And I think the one shot Trainer took on it hit a pole in the middle of the crease, didn't even make it to the goal mouth. So
I hate the goal mouth rule.
He doesn't give a shit about winning games by 15 goals. He'll win. Right. Tillman will win 9-7 every game.
Yeah.
He doesn't care.
Well, he's one of the old school ones, though, right? Like everybody wants to run and gun now.
He's old school, but he's also like very intuitive with how lacrosse is now. He's not, he's not a fossil.
I was gonna say they rebuild every year, and it's just stupid how they rebuild.
He was one of the first coaches to be walking around the sideline with one of those Microsoft tablets.
Yeah,
just watching plays from the possession before, watching plays from the first half. And learning from them, and this is what was working. This wasn't. Yeah, and that's why he's always there. Right. He's always there. He's always right in the middle of contention.
Well, you talked about it. So you talked about Gary with how you don't know where he is during the huddles because they don't really.
I don't know what he's saying.
Yeah,
if he's saying anything at all. I'll say
that. So against Carolina, like I said, I don't know how much they showed on the TV because I didn't rewatch it because I was very annoyed with everything that happened during that. He was mostly with the offensive side. He wasn't on the defensive side at all. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just the way, obviously, it works out, right?
I think he leaves a lot of that. I think he leans on O'Derna a lot.
Yeah.
Because, listen, he coached He's obviously very familiar with that side of the ball. He was defensive minded at Manhattan too.
Yeah.
Let's leave that to him. He's got veterans, right? He's got a lot of older guys. Grace is, a 4-year starter and not, at RIT for most of it, but Dwan's been a starter. Figueres has been a starter.
Right.
Caden Cole, I think he's still there, right?
He's there.
Another one that's played
he
a
plays
lot.
on man down mostly.
Yeah,
That he's a man down.
And then Carter Rice is a senior that has played the position for 4 years. So, and Sam English, he'll play both ways. They got a lot of experience. They don't really need, a ton of dictating. They kind of know their job.
Well, the thing, so you'll appreciate this because we're around the same age. The people here compare Carter Rice to Matt Abbott. That's the best comparison I've heard because he is the human clear. I mean, Matt Abbott
in that degree, everything else not so much.
No, I know, but Matt Abbott was a better offensive player. Like, I think
Matt Abbott might have been the best lacrosse player I've ever watched. And outside of like the obvious people, like obviously Mikey Powell,
and,
Pat Spencer and and Rob Pennell, Matt Danowski, all those guys are phenomenal in their own right. But for what Matt Abbott does, you get your money's worth from him every game because he does. He's Sam English. He probably is on the sideline for like 10% of the game.
Yeah, and he would always and he would run with the first. He would do his thing. Okay, here's your breather. We got a timeout. You're going back out there on defense.
I'm pretty sure that year, your intro video, it's got the Cornell goal, Kenny's goal.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure that year he was a Torton finalist.
Right.
Matt was. And I think that was your Seaball won it.
Crazy. Which is crazy, though, when you think about it. Because most of the people consider him a defensive midi.
He was, if you let Matt Abbott run first line Ole Midi, he'd probably get you 50 points every year.
Yeah.
He was just that talented. But he was I'll use my favorite non-Duke long stick midi of all time, Joel White.
Yep.
Cortland Proud.
Yep.
was a phenomenal short stick offensive midi in high school. Like 300 points in high school. And he goes to Syracuse and they say, Joel, we don't need you to play offense. How about you pick up this pole?
Right.
And then he's an All-American 4 years in a row. So,
but I think that's how a lot of things work out. Because whoever it is, Joel's a great example, right? Joel's the example that we all know. Because everybody here in Section 3 knows what he did in high school. And to go, like you said, to go to Syracuse and them saying, nope, you're good. We don't need your short stick. Like, you're good. Don't touch it. We want you on the wing on face-off. We want you playing defense, but we want you in transition as well.
I mean, the nerve to say to Joel White, there wasn't really 5-star classifications back then.
Yeah.
Those didn't really happen back in the early 2000s.
Right.
There was no notable outlets. I don't know if Inside Lacrosse did it or anybody, but it just wasn't a thing back then. But to take a Joel White, who was maybe the best athlete that's ever played lacrosse at Syracuse. I know it's a hot take. To say, Joel, we don't want you to play offense.
I'm just going to say, send a message to Mike with those responses. Don't send it to me. I wasn't the one who said it. So Mike will deal with it.
I think a lot of people would agree.
I think they do.
I think I think it's remarkable that he could do that after never doing it. You know what I mean? He never played pole. He was a great, short stick offensive midi, and he did something completely different. So, and he was great at it. I mean, did you ever hear the story about John Galloway? John Galloway was a great attackman, and Mike Misser said, "You know what?
I don't think
I
always
take actually, my best offensive player and I try to get him to go play goalie." And then John was goalie, and he ends up being a 2-time goalie of the year, wins 2 rings, and has a long professional career. So, and now he's a great head coach.
I was just going to say, now he develops into a great head coach because he knows that side, though, right? Because now, like you said, he knows that side from his high school days.
Yeah.
And or middle school, whatever. He knows that side enough to be like, okay, I can coach this here. Obviously, he's smart. I'm not saying any D1 coach is stupid. But, like, Gary focuses on the offensive side, right? Because he has Oderna. There are other coaches who do the exact same thing. It's not just a Gary thing.
No.
But
I look at the sideline at a Duke game during a timeout, and Danowski doesn't even stand in huddle.
Yeah.
He lets Kevin run the defense, and Matt runs the offense. And
which works out, though, right? Because now you're going to highlight all those assistants when a job comes open. Now you're going to say, okay, Matt, you know what? Matt runs this. Kevin runs that.
Yeah, you're almost kind of promoting them and showing them they can actually run a side of the ball by themselves.
I think Gary essentially does the same thing. He's learned it enough from everybody else because Pat obviously runs the offense, right? So he's vocal enough on the sidelines. So, like, you're going to see that.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing. Like, you said it perfectly. So, like, somebody's going to collab that with some Gary comment, but that's a perfect way to say it. Like, you're promoting your assistants without promoting them. Because now if I'll use Lemoyne I'll use Mercier's, right? Mercier's comes calling and they say, Gary, we need a head coach. We know Pat March is on the offense side. Gary can show them. Yep, he ran the offense. I sat back and gave them little. Obviously, they're communicating. They're not like not talking, but like Oro Derna, he ran both sides.
Yeah,
and he ran with the D mids. Obviously, all that.
Yeah, I mean it's almost like an in-season interview for
right.
what could be next. You know.
Which is great, though. Like, a lot of teams don't do that. Like,
not everybody is a lifer as a coordinator, you know.
Yeah.
Not now. Maybe back then.
I was gonna say Donahue was a coordinator for years.
Yeah.
Like,
and oh God, what's his name? The offensive coordinator at Denver was Tierney's.
Yeah.
Not offensive coordinator. The defensive coordinator at Denver was Tierney's right-hand man for his entire run there. So it's just not. It's not how it is anymore. Guys want opportunities to run their own program, and there's a lot of new programs that will need coaches, experienced coaches. So, but what else? What else with the ACC tournament? Any other?
Okay, so here's my hypothetical for you then. Okay, Syracuse beats Notre Dame in overtime. Okay, Carolina beats Duke. Is it the same result? Because like that's the issue for me, right? I'd rather see Duke again. I hate to say it that way than you, but like
it's really all about adjusting because what Duke did in the first game to North Carolina's offense.
Yeah.
Can you do it again?
Right.
Can you really limit Duffy and Petro? Because I don't think Petro had a goal.
Right.
If he did, he had the one bullshit goal, but
yeah,
or maybe he scored another one late, but he was ineffective most of the game.
Right.
Can you battle enough at the X to split
muck it up?
Can you clear well? Because they didn't clear well against North Carolina.
Right.
Can you win the ground? Can you win the miscellaneous stat categories? The ground balls, the shots on goal, the possession time. Can you split? Can you go 50-50 on faceoffs? Because this is a 66% guy. He's very good.
Right.
So it's all those little tiny hypotheticals that if you're just a little bit better and you maybe adjust to what you really sucked at the first time, maybe there's a different result. Or if you don't and they don't shoot as bad, you probably get rolled.
Yeah.
So you don't want that to happen. But I don't know. North Carolina is notorious for going through lulls in games too. They had a long drought against us. They had a long drought against Notre Dame.
I mean, they kind of had it against us too.
I mean, they were they buried Virginia inevitably, but that game was tied for half of it. So,
well, the crazy thing though about like the faceoffs. So, like, here's where faceoffs are misleading, right? If Mullen wins it clean, nobody bats an eye. And if you rewatch most of those faceoffs against Carolina, he shot the ball back and he quote won them.
Yeah.
But the ball went up weird. You know how the ball bounces sometimes, it goes a weird angle. He looks up, he sees a glare. Now Carolina wins it, and it goes as a Carolina win.
Yeah.
Which is stupid and good at the same time, obviously. I understand the rule. I'm not even saying it in a bad way, but like Mullen, quote, won those.
It's North Carolina and Virginia to that effect. always really, really good on loose balls.
Yeah.
And it's such a huge part of the game.
Right.
Unless Syracuse has someone just completely defensive and is making sure that Wambach couldn't pull it back.
Right.
It's just you can't play that way.
Well, and they went to 2 pulls towards the end too. Towards the end when they made the comeback, and they had Sammy obviously down low on the defensive side. So that way, if you do lose it, great, Sammy's there, and but you have 2 pulls. That way, you're getting the ball with 2 pulls on the faceoff 99% of the time.
Right.
Mucking
up those faceoffs is huge. Give your wings a chance to kind of get in there and jar the ball loose, create some havoc. Losing, if Will Lynch decides he's going to be playoff Will Lynch, and win everything to himself and push tempo and dominate possession,
right?
How's the defense going to react? Are they going to reel? How's McCool going to play? I mean, that's where it all starts: goalie play and faceoff play.
Yeah. What do you think about the goal mouth rule? I haven't really talked to you much about this on the side.
I think it's inconsistent.
Okay.
I think it's ruled differently every game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who was it? Finn Thompson that fell in it? That would have made it a 1-goal game?
Or
Finn. He put his stick in it or some shit?
Put his stick. We're gonna say quote his glove somehow whatever.
I mean, I watched 2 Tufts games this year. I think Christopher Newport was one of them, and maybe Wesleyan or Bowden, one of the 2, where it was a crease violation that kept the game going. That would have lost it for Tufts.
Right.
And I've seen it. I don't know. I've seen Chris Kavanaugh fucking land his whole body and not get called.
Well, I think it's got to be a judgment call though, right? Because and this is as a neutral fan as there's going to be with this. If Finn Thompson doesn't go near the goalie, I just don't think there should be a goal mouth call. I understand the safety part of it.
That's where it's so gray. You know what I mean?
But I would say the same thing if a Duke player did it, right? Like if they don't, Kavanaugh dives at people's feet. It's the way he does it, and it works. But that's where the safety part comes in. If you want to call it that way, I can understand that. But if your stick isn't even near the guy, and let's say my thumb from my glove lands, I'm not technically doing anything that's violating the safety. I know it's hindsight 2020, obviously, right? It could have worked out where the goalie tore his ACL somehow.
Yeah.
Stepping.
I mean, that's the whole purpose, right? That's the whole purpose of it, was to protect the goalie from any sort of impact in the crease on dive shots when they brought the dive back.
Yeah.
But it's just so gray. Don't bring the dive back if it's gonna come with an extra layer of rules. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
These guys are, I don't know, to make the game more electric and exciting. Dive shots are great.
Yeah.
But if you're going to add a whole nother sub level of ruling that's so inconsistent and gray, I don't even know if it's worth it.
I don't think it is though. Because just for an example, when you see that replay in that game, right? Once again, this is a live versus TV. They were showing the crease.
Yeah.
They had no idea that it was goal mouth. They showed literally where his feet were on the crease. And now, obviously, watching it, the replay, it's a good call by the letter of how.
But yeah.
It's a good. I told people this when I saw it. It was a crap call. Now that I saw it on the replay, it's a good call. Was
it challenged? Did Gate challenge it? Because it was ruled a no goal, right?
It was ruled a goal. They called it a goal. It was called a goal, and then they got together and they did the stupid box signal and twice during that game. But
I could see the look on Finn's face after they said that it was getting reviewed. He was.
Oh yeah, but they know it though.
He was frustrated because I think he was I think I did land my hand in the goal.
Yeah,
completely. Not really threatening the goalie in any way.
I was going to say that's where it kind of gets dumb though, right? Because if his thumb lands outside of the goal, we're not having this conversation.
Yeah.
And we're not having the goal mouth for this game.
We might be having a different conversation about how North Carolina choked away the biggest lead ever in the last minute.
Well, but so that's where it gets frustrating. It's a perfect way to say it. I'll get you out on this because I know you got other stuff. I got 75 things. But like, I think as a fan, you know this because we joked about I'll joke about your Mets when I say it this way, right?
Hey, the Mets
it's like the Mets play good in the first 4 innings, and then when it comes down to it, they do nothing.
Yeah.
Syracuse is notorious, unfortunately, this year for that. Like they have their time, but it's reversed, right? So they get blown away by Carolina. And then the last 2 minutes, something turns on. And they go, whether it was Carolina pumping the brakes, whether it was Syracuse, I think there's a combination of both, but like you could tell that Bresci started to get nervous.
I think it's you see how loose they play when the pressure of maintaining a lead is not there.
Yeah.
Like the only time this year where they maintained a lead for the entirety of the game was probably Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
Every other game was kind of back and forth. They'd get up, it would dwindle, and then they'd get back up in wins, of course.
Right.
But North Carolina, when they went down, I think 13 or 14-8, you just saw a different level of they weren't tight. It was the offense was just free flowing. They were playing with almost a new sense of urgency, like now or never. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like we're in the field, we're in the ACC tournament, right?
Yeah.
But this is a 1 seed we're talking about here, so they really kind of kicked it into. They just ran out of time.
Well, and I don't know if you listened Monday. So I don't know which player. Matt wouldn't tell me. Apparently, one of them walked by him and said, "We're sorry we blew it for the fans."
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah.
Like, and that sucks. Like, generally sucks. I know you had the same feeling about the DMing players after.
No, I mean, I don't really.
No, but I think we're on the same page.
They're kids, they're 18 to 22-year-old kids.
Yeah.
And they have a big, huge crowd like that.
Yeah.
For a Saturday game against the top 5, top 10 team.
Yep.
They want to put on a good show, and I feel like and the season's far from over for them, but I feel like when you don't play the entire game to your capability, you're like, okay, well, they came out here and we didn't even give them what they wanted, So there is a level of disappointment they have in themselves, and Matt said it perfectly. He's like, there's nobody more upset at a loss than the coaches and players, right?
Yeah.
We as fans, we watch and we're like, oh, that sucks, but we move on with our lives. It doesn't really affect us beyond that.
Yeah, I think.
But watching, and it's the same thing. Like Duke got fucking steamrolled by Denver. I didn't pay for that. I would never pay $18 to Corrigan Sports Network for that.
I will never pay them $1.
But they go down. I think the game was in Texas. They go down there and it's just a no-show. And you have fans coming from states nearby that don't get to see a lot of lacrosse.
Yeah.
And then you see that effort, and it's like, how do you not feel disappointed in how you played?
Well, I mean, there's people that travel from Rochester to Syracuse for game days.
Oh yeah.
And I know that's not far in comparison, but like that, and I understand the frustration, right? Because like I tweeted it, that's the quietest I've ever heard the Dome.
Yeah,
just people walking out from that game.
I mean, they said it on the broadcast. They go, people are starting to leave.
Yeah, but like I hate that. I hate the early crap. I'm sorry. As a fan, I hate when people leave early.
I can't, because I don't know when I'm going to be able to come back and see him again. So I'm gonna give them my full 2 hours worth of attention. And
yeah, but even for somebody like me, right? I live close enough where I can go to every game if I really want to. Outside of my work schedule, which obviously is my work schedule, but like I don't even leave early, and I'm like, don't make dinner. It's kind of a rant in a way. Don't make dinner reservations for an hour, 20 minutes after the game, right? Because if it goes into overtime and it gets crazy, we both have seen it enough times. It can get crazy and it can go for another hour, or some review takes 5 minutes.
And I remember going to games as a kid, Syracuse games as a kid with my dad and a couple of my dad's friend and his son.
Yeah.
And, we went and we saw a lot of Syracuse blowouts, and they never pulled us out of there. Oh, it's 18-7. Let's go. And you see other kids getting their dads, let's beat traffic. Let's get out of here.
Yeah.
The experience is staying and watching as much as you can, right? And then maybe getting a chance to see the players when they come off the field and
the autographs and all that.
Yeah,
even,
and it's
even when you're kids, obviously, or adults in Matt's case, because Matt hunts kids down for autographs.
Yeah, and he's got a young son, right? And I know his son really probably loves to get the full experience, right?
I was gonna say I joke with him about that, but I understand why he does it.
Yeah, even if you go to 6-7 home games a year, every game is a new. You never know what you're gonna, like you said. If you would have walked out of that Syracuse game when it was 14-8, and then they came back and won 15-14 in OT, you'd be devastated that you missed that. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's just something I'm with you on that. I can't leave early. I got to just give it my full attention for 60 minutes.
Well, especially after, I was gonna say especially after you're paying the money to go.
Exactly, and you're making the trip and you're making a day out of it.
You've already spent the money.
Right.
I don't know. Why not just stay?
But all right, I got to check out.
Yeah.
Good luck tomorrow. I'll be watching.
So I'll get you out of here because my Wi-Fi. I was gonna say my Wi-Fi.
Yeah, you're getting a little fuzzy. But I'll
we'll end it there because the Wi-Fi. We'll chat.
Yeah, we'll talk tomorrow. Just shoot me a message.
Okay, I will.
All right,
thanks,
buddy,
Mike.
All right,
see you.
I see you.